Good afternoon. My name is Kara Joseph, and today I'm joined with Ms. Riggle and Mr. Sudol talking about weighted grades. School districts want kids to challenge themselves, but not at the expense of their mental well-being, says Emily Polakek, a social studies teacher at Hinsdale South High School. 95% of teens have felt inferior in their lives, and of these teens, 38% report this because of their intelligence. This may be from the stress that academic competition places on students by comparing them too harshly by their weighted GPAs. High schoolers have so much pressure placed on them to retain good grades and a high GPA, but it's hard for any student to really make themselves look good academically on paper when everyone's GPAs nowadays is so weighted. Our school district, to combat this, should require an A in all courses for any weighting to count. While it's a great thing that more students are getting higher GPAs, if every student has such an impressive GPA, then no one's will actually look impressive at all. As Scott Jasek, Cornell University graduate and one of the founders of Higher Inside Ed, says, a 4.0 prize in a previous generation is seen as a slacker's GPA. This is because so many students are getting higher GPAs because of the weighting applied to their GPA from advanced courses that they are not actually getting the highest grade in. Students who put in the effort to get the desired grade should be the ones rewarded with weighting. Stress can also be a huge concern that comes with such grade inflation. Academic competition that is perpetuated by comparing inflated GPAs can scare students and cause them emotional stress. They think they need to be taking the hardest classes they can possibly take. For example, Palo Alto School District has decided to weight all grades with the exception of freshman grades to alleviate stress from new high schoolers. That way, students could focus more on doing their best in the courses that they are taking to get the GPA they want and not worrying about the courses itself being weighted. Another factor to the stress can be excessive pressure from parents. As said by Timothy Hayes, an assistant superintendent of student services, many parents want their children to either meet or surpass what they have achieved, but there's not a whole lot of room to surpass the success of a parent who is a CEO of a Fortune 500 company. Since the world, not just in high school setting, but in the workforce too, is so competitive, it's obvious parents would want their children to get the best grades they can for the best chance of success. However, such pressure with lack of positive reinforcement can cause more harm than good and pile on the mountain of stress that high schoolers already have to face. With such academic competition kept to a minimum with altered weighting, the need for students to stress about comparing themselves to others will also be minimized. Welcome. So first off, I just want to ask you guys, what do you think some of the benefits and what of the negative effects of weighting are for students?
Well, Kara, I would say sort of based on your introduction, a lot of the things that we've done here at the high school were done with the intent of trying to reduce some of that pressure. When I started at Peters Township High School, we ranked students. So at the end of the year, or actually when the student would go into their senior year, every student had a rank in their class. And we had eliminated those things because we did not want the students to compare their classes and their achievement in each of their classes. We wanted their achievement to be their own. And so the other part of that is that there actually is not a top GPA. So it's often colleges will ask us, what is the top GPA that a student can get? And we don't have one. It is an open-ended question. And again, that is to remove that proposed ranking to eliminate the sort of comparison between all the students. So I think when we have come to our rank or our weighted grade system, ours was created to try to reward students for their hard work, for taking that step to maybe taking a first AP or a first honors class and realizing that the expectation, the workload is going to be greater than the class maybe preceding to that, and wanted to reward students with some advanced weighting in their GPA. Thoughts? Okay.
Yeah. Now, do you think that the fact different high schools have different systems of weighting makes it unfair for students in college?
So when we talked to, last year we talked to a number of college reps when they come to the school, and some colleges actually say that they have seen 60 or 70 different ways of calculating a GPA. And so really what's most important when a student applies to college is that they want to see what types of classes that you're taking. So if you're going to go into media or communications, that those are the classes that you're taking and you're excelling in them. If you're going to a competitive college, and so they want to see that you've taken AP and honors classes and done well. So it's really the final grade in each individual class that is more important than the GPA itself.
And what other things do colleges look at besides GPA, like extracurriculars?
I would say GPA and test scores and SAT scores are not the only things that the colleges are going to look at. They're going to look at your course load. Are you challenging yourself while you're here in high school? They're going to look at also what you're doing outside of classwork. So are you in a lot of clubs and activities? Are you involved in your community? Are you volunteering? They want to see kind of the reflection of who you are as a person, rather than that you're taking all the AP courses and then you have really good test scores, but you were so focused on academics. They want to see that you were also involved in other things. So I would say it's a holistic picture of who you are as a person. So you don't really need to stress that much about, am I taking every AP course? Is all my grades going to be okay? Everything's going to work out in the end.
And one of the reasons that we encourage students to try an AP or an honors class is that when students make that transition to college, they are taking courses where they're not getting a homework grade, or they're not getting class participation points, or doing that weekly project. So the student has to learn to assess on their own, are they learning the material, and their grade may come down to just a midterm and a final. And so if the student isn't used to, if every grade that they do is a homework grade, a daily homework grade, and daily participation, they're getting a lot of points that way, they're not training themselves to do a self-assessment of whether they're learning the content.
And do you guys see a lot of students overwhelming themselves with honors and AP classes, and should they take it down a notch?
That I think is a very individualized question. I mean, certainly if a student's aspiration is to go to an Ivy League school, or if they want to go to a direct med program where when the student applies to college they're getting into both their undergraduate and medical degree studies, then I do think they need to take the most challenging class in each subject area, because the applicant pool is going to be so competitive. But I do think that most students can have a balance of academic honors and AP, so that they are learning how to be a good student while also learning how to be a healthy student throughout school.
I think you touched on this earlier, but would you say that it's better to have an A in an academic course or a B in an AP course?
I would say that we get that question a lot, and certainly it is individualized. I think that it isn't as simple as saying which is better. I guess if you are taking an honors and AP class, do you think that it is possible that you can get an A in that class? And if you aren't, then are there things that you could be doing differently? So I think students need to move away from always seeing their classes as success or failure, or better or worse. So I think that at times they can look at their study skills or their class preparation. Are there things that I can do differently that may improve my grade, instead of just pouring more time into preparation?
And I think, Kara, the best way to answer that question is, am I feeling challenged in my courses? So if you're between taking academic or honors or AP, it's really just asking, am I being challenged, or can I be challenged more? And then if you can answer that question, then I think you should go with your gut and take that course.
And do you see a lot of students basing their self-worth off GPA and kind of scaring themselves, comparing them to others?
I think that's a very individualized question. What do you think?
So I think that that's sort of the essence of being a teenager. It seems that everything is certainly filtered through the here and now, and you'll see students that will on one day recognize that they are very good students, and on the next day they sort of think that they're dumb or stupid because they didn't do as well on a test. But a final grade in a class has no meaning as to whether a student is intelligent or not. It's just whether they were able to sort of fill in all the check marks for that class.
And when students do get overwhelmed, why should they go talk to counselors or a trusted adult to help with that?
I feel like it's very easy to kind of turn your feelings inside and keep them inside, but then everything bottles up, and sometimes we just explode when things bottle up. So it's very good to talk to your counselor and talk to your teachers, because they're here for you too. They don't just come to work every day and just be here. They're here to help you. They want to see you succeed, just as your counselors do. And also, it never hurts to talk to a friend either. You guys can talk it, if they're in the same class, you guys can talk it out and say, what's going on? Do you feel this way? And if you guys agree and feel the same way, then you kind of are getting those feelings out and you're talking about them rather than bringing them in internally and kind of bottling everything up and exploding.
And communicating and asking for help is a good life skill. Nobody can get through life just doing things themselves. I mean, certainly when we're doing tasks here at work, whether working in something office or organizing the PSATs, we need lots of help, and so we reach out for all those our colleagues to help us with those projects.
And it's also good practice too for your post-secondary choices that you decide to go to. If you decide to go to college, you have to be able to seek out those helping services, and then even if you would just go onto a job or a technical school, you would still need to figure out who you would need to talk to get your questions answered. So it kind of gives you that practice of reaching out and finding resources to help you. So.
And what are some of the things that you would recommend for someone overwhelmed with GPA or their courses? Like, should they talk to their teachers? Should they find new ways of studying?
Well, I think as Ms. Riggle was saying, if you come down to your counselor, I think one of the first questions or the first discussion points is, why does the student feel that they need a certain grade or a certain GPA? What is the end goal that they are seeking out? And so I think talking through that process of understanding where in your understanding of your GPA, where that falls in, and the weight of that importance in your life. So I think some students, to go back to your point of confidence, I think some students think I need to get an A for me to feel good about myself and then be confident in who I am. And so then there's just a misplacement of worth on those types of things.
And if you are taking an AP course and you find that it is too challenging, talk to your teacher and say, what are my options? Do you think I would do, is honors a better placement for me? And maybe that's something that you could look into and switching into. It doesn't mean anything bad. It just, honors is still going to be a challenging course. It would just maybe benefit you better as a student.
I think that's all the time we have for questions in this segment. We'll be right back with Ms. Riggle and Mr. Sudol talking about weighted grades. Welcome back to The Edge with Ms. Riggle and Mr. Sudol. So we left off with the stress, but I'd like to talk about, why do colleges unweight grades?
Well, all colleges don't unweight grades. Our official GPA that comes out of our high school is the weighted grade. There will be some colleges that will unweight grades and then utilize their own way of weighting grades. And so probably the best example of this is Penn State. They will unweight our GPA, and then they have a system in which they apply weight back in. And so I think that they do this sort of what we talked about before the break, when a college had mentioned that they see 60 or 70 different ways of calculating a GPA. And so that's very difficult for schools, especially schools as large as Penn State that are going to have a lot of applications. They need to create a system that's fair to everyone. And so having a way of evaluating all GPAs they see they have found that system works best for them.
Yeah.
Okay.
And why do some people believe that unweighted GPAs are like a better showing of the work, and some people believe that weighted GPAs are better?
So I guess it's your unweighted GPA is truly an average calculation of the grade that the student has earned in all of their classes. So it is the truest GPA. However, it is not giving the student sort of any accolades for having taken a more difficult class, which is the whole reason for having a weighted grade, is that the school is recognizing that the amount of work and the amount of attention to detail that you need to do in an AP class is going to be much greater than an academic class, and so therefore we give that grade in the AP class more weight in the GPA.
And do colleges look more at the letter grades or more at the courses themselves?
Definitely more at the courses that you're taking. But we touched on this a little earlier, that if you're going to go into media or communications, they want to see that you're taking those courses. I also think it's important too for letters of rec. Your teachers are going to talk about you in your letters of rec of how you are as a student in the classroom. So that kind of shows, yeah, they have this letter grade in my class, but this is how they are as a student. They're hardworking. They have a strong work ethic. They're dedicated. They get their assignments in on time. They work very hard. So that's kind of going to be a reflection of who you are as a student. So that's also something that plays a very important role in the application process. Same with a counselor letter rec. They're going to show you who you are as a person, and they're going to take those aspects and put them into that letter, and then colleges are going to see that, so they're not just looking at the letter, your letter grade.
So I think, what we keep coming back to is that it is very individualized, and there are a lot of parts to your life as a student that is going to have a meaningful impact on applying to college. And so everything is within context of what your academic goals are. If a student were to take all academic classes and get straight A's, that doesn't mean that they could apply to any school and get in. So there are going to be colleges, you have Carnegie Mellon or a Johns Hopkins, which are looking for very specific things in students. And so even if the student had a 4.0, if they didn't take the challenging coursework, which was a prerequisite for those colleges, they wouldn't gain acceptance. So it's not all about the GPA. It is really thinking about the end in mind. What does the student want to accomplish? What are their goals in getting into school? And then putting them in the best possible position with their classes and their activities and their relationships with their teachers so that they have a good letter of recommendation, they have a resume, and they're volunteering, and you want to be a well-rounded person when you apply to school.
And a lot of students are worried about grade inflation.
Mm-hmm.
Why are they so worried about that, and how can that be addressed?
I think that if this is something that you guys as students strongly feel about, or have a strong feeling towards, and you want to see a change, then be that advocate. Be the advocate for change.
And I guess that that's sort of a loaded question. If you think about your life as a student within a class, how would you feel if on a sort of a hierarchy of all your grades, your teacher said you are doing really well, and really well in my class means that you're getting a 78%, but that's a hard-earned 78%. You should be proud of that. Would you be okay with that? And when you went home, would your parents be okay that you had earned a 78%? And while we would like to think that that is true, that is not how it plays out a lot. And so I think that there is that expectation that if I check off those boxes, that if I do my homework every day, that if I complete all of my projects, that if I study for my exams, that I deserve an A. And I think that's something that schools are always wrestling with. And it could be that my best effort when I went to turn in that paper was a C, and there's no shame in earning that C. But right now there is. I think that for most students and parents, the only acceptable grade is an A, and then every grade below that is unacceptable. And so I think then that leads to grade inflation. And then there's a way that students are able to get extra credit, or if you have classes where you have over 100%, how's that possible? And so I think then that's extra credit, and you're doing extra things, and all that is just now giving you a grade that's inflated.
And with parent pressure, how can that affect students' mental health and their stress levels?
Yeah, that's probably right there near the top of where students' stress and anxiety come from, and I think that's difficult to manage. I think some parents have at an early age set a goal for their son or daughter, and as you're getting toward the finish line of that goal, it's sort of a natural consequence that the pressure rises. But I think that we sort of touched on before the break that really the communication could be the way to dissipate some of that. I think that so often students will come to school and they'll say, well, my mom or dad wants me to be an engineer, or I have to be a doctor because everybody in my family is a doctor, or I have to do this, or I have to do that. And so there isn't any discussion there. The student is at no point going back to the parents and saying, I'd rather be an art teacher, or I want to be a sports broadcaster. That's something that I really enjoy in school. And so I think trying to come up with those communication relationships through school can help with some of that, so that you're not going toward a goal that you don't want, and now you're working hard for an undesired end.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And why do so many people believe that positive reinforcement is the way to go with parents, and not like scaring their kids into taking hard classes?
I think it's always just important. I think it's important to just always be positive, because sometimes we may hear negative things and then take those in and internalize them. So then it causes a little more of a negative feeling, or a little more anxiety. So I think it's always just important to have a positive attitude toward things and towards classes, because you can always better yourself, and you can always become a better person. So just as long as you're striving towards that, that's really the ultimate goal.
And I think if you think about your classes here at school, I think those classes where you and your peers are working together, and there's lots of cheering for each other, and positive self-talk and positive encouragement, those are the classes that you enjoy the most. I think if you're doing something to avoid a negative consequence, then you lose motivation. It creates a lot of anxiety, because you don't know if you're actually progressing or not. You're just avoiding a negative reinforcement at that point.
And a lot of students will say like, oh, I'm getting a B in this AP class, but it equates to an A in another class. Is that true? Should they think like that?
So mathematically, it is not true. But again, it's not. When you take an AP class, you are not taking it to get the grade. You're taking it because that's a subject you really enjoy, or that's a subject that in a career field that you're pursuing, that's why you're taking that class, because you want to learn that content. You want to be challenged in that way. You shouldn't take a class simply because you think you're going to get an A, B, C, whatever at the end.
And I would say too, advanced placement courses are seen as a college preparatory course. So if you are taking that, you should have the mindset of, this is something that I'm looking forward to studying after high school, and I really want to start learning, what college is going to look like for me. So maybe that's kind of what the mindset you should have when you're taking an AP course too.
And since colleges look at extracurriculars too, do you think it'd be better for students to take like a few AP and honors and like one or two extracurriculars, or no extracurriculars and like all AP and honors?
So I guess there's not an exact formula. You need to think about what are the things that I enjoy doing. So your extracurriculars are giving your life some enjoyment. Those are things that you are good stress relays, or that you just enjoy participating in. And your classes, again, are what is going to help to best prepare you for the future.
I think it's very individualized to the person. Extracurriculars to someone could mean volunteering outside of school, or it could mean a school-sponsored club, or it could mean a sport. And, someone might be able to take AP courses and volunteer outside of school, whereas some may not want to take an AP course and have a very involved sport. It kind of just depends on the person and what their interests are and what they want to do.
And why do some support just getting rid of weighting altogether or modifying it?
So the downside of weighting grades is that at times students will have a false sense of how they are achieving. And so for some school districts that have both weighted grades and ranking, because a student has over a 4.0, they may think that they're top quarter of the class or top 10% of the class or what have you, and they may not actually be. And so for some students, and again, depending on what their goal is that they're shooting for, may have a false sense of their accomplishments.
And I think that's all the time we have for questions today. Overly inflated GPAs can trick students into thinking a B in an advanced class equates to an A in any regular course. This causes students not to really do their best work in higher level classes, since they are getting the weighting anyways. However, many colleges, such as the University of California, Berkeley, reports on the unweighted GPA of all students. Colleges will unweight GPAs to get an accurate idea of how much effort the student puts into a class, not just the classes they decided to take. This contributes to the argument that grade inflation needs to be controlled. All schools, including Peters Township School District, should require an A for weighting to count. This is to make sure the students who put in the work are rewarded, to ease stress over academic competition, and to encourage students to do their best no matter what class they're in. Thank you for tuning in to The Edge, and have a great afternoon, Peters.